This is the brand new Sigma 70-200 DG-DN lens, a lens that many of us have been asking for and hoping for and praying for and fasting for and whatever for years now. It's finally here, so let's talk about it. Now, this video isn't paid or sponsored. I don't get to keep this lens. I'm sending it back to Sigma, but they obviously sent it early, so a big thanks to Sigma for sending it out. This video is supported by Cascade presets, which are my own presets, and LUTs as well. And if you are interested in picking this lens up, buying it through the affiliate links down below, it gives me a small commission with no extra cost to you, which helps support the channel and allows me to make more videos like this. So first of all, this lens is fantastic. And I use that word a lot, I understand, in multiple different videos, but the performance of this lens is legitimately really good. I don't currently own the Sony nor the Panasonic Lumix, but I have used both of them, and this absolutely does rival both in terms of performance. And so what I will say about this right off the bat is that I legitimately just love that there are amazing third-party options out there that allow us to get very high quality, incredibly professional level stuff at a significant discount over the current OEM kind of stuff. And I will keep harping on this for a long time, even though Canon obviously doesn't want to send me anything, and probably why. The fact that this isn't going to be available, at least now in the time of recording this, on the Canon RF mount is a bit of a tragedy, because you, I think, legitimately are losing customers every single day that you're not opening up that mount to other people. I know myself and many other people have switched to Sony, and a large part of that is because that RF mount, while amazing and the first party options are amazing, the amount of other lenses that are available in both the L mount and the E mount are significantly more than the current RF offerings. So while this lens is amazing, if you are a Canon user, you can only pray that this lens will someday be available in the RF mount. So right off the bat, for L mount at least, this thing weighs 1,345 grams. And I am definitely someone that really considers how large, how balanced, and how heavy a lens is. It's definitely heavy, and it is significantly heavier than both the Tamron and Sony offerings. So if you're looking for a small, lightweight 70-200 f2.8 lens, this is definitely not going to be the case for you, but I think this lens in its price point and its performance definitely make up for that if those two things aren't on the top of your list. So I guess I'll continue to just go over my complaints with this lens as we are jumping into there. One of the first things that I noticed was that while the tripod collar here is really well made and it rotates really easily, there is no way to just take this off. I know on the Sony one, you can just slide it right off. It's no big deal. And so as a lens that's already fairly heavy, there's no way to take off this other thing that is also pretty heavy. So if you're not gonna be using this on a tripod, which I know a lot of like wedding photographers and even a lot of sports photographers aren't necessarily using a 70-200 on a monopod. Typically, it's more of the longer lenses that you're using on a monopod. Obviously, some people are going to use it. So if this was my copy, I would definitely be taking this off to save some weight as well as room in the bag. If I was doing some video work, yes, it's really nice to have a tripod collar thing here. The other kind of interesting thing is with all of the new phase detect autofocus cameras out there, I'm not often using the manual focus ring here. And so my hand naturally is resting right here to get some sort of balance, maybe even back a little bit further because of the way this lens is balanced. The zoom ring is all the way up here. And so I'm kind of having to handhold it in a way that is a little bit awkward for me. Normally, I would want those things to be switched because I find needing to reach up there to zoom in and out isn't the most natural thing for me, at least. I'm sure I would get used to it, but it is a con for me right off the bat. Speaking of that as well, you can tell that the lens hood here, which I do like actually, it runs into, it like overlaps onto where your zoom ring is here. So a little bit odd. It's kind of nice, I guess, if you're reaching up there really quick to know where to stop. but also there's this little bump here as well. So I don't really know why you would need to overlap this. I guess maybe just because it's so close to the end of the lens, but it's just kind of another one of those oddities of this lens that I'm kind of curious as to why they did it. Personally, I like to be able to handhold the rest of this thing, so it kind of throws it off having the lens hood here overlap into the focusing ring for some reason. All that being said, though, this has a ton of amazing ergonomics in terms of just options and how you would use the lens. So you have a really nice clicked or declicked, I believe, if you would like, aperture ring here. Then another classic just focus AF/MF switch. It then has a kind of focus limiter. Typically, if you're shooting sports, it's nice to have the ability to make sure you're just getting the stuff that's far out and the camera's not worried about picking up stuff that's a little bit too close. It also has really, really good optical stabilization. And then you can also adjust how these buttons work. The way I have it set up, especially with the Sony a7R5, is I have it set to APS-C crop mode. So if I need to punch in, I can move from 200 to that 1.5x crop, giving me essentially like a 300 millimeter f4-ish without having to use a teleconverter, which brings me also to the teleconverter on here or lack thereof. You can use a teleconverter and specifically Sigma's teleconverter on the L mount, but there is no compatibility that I know of currently with the Sony E mounts and the regular Sony teleconverters, the 1.4 and the 2X. So if you are someone that's wanting to use this in an extended capacity, I know when I was doing sports stuff, I would often toss a teleconverter on and off when needed, because this converts from a 200 at a 2X to a essentially 400 5.6. And so that can be a really, really useful option, but on the Sony E mount, at least, that's just not an option for you. You can purchase the Sigma versions on the Leica L mount, but not available on the Sony E mount. Now, as far as focus goes, this thing is just wicked fast. I have zero issues with it. While I was doing some testing in my backyard, I had zero issues with tracking, and this thing is so snappy. It has, Sigma's versions of the linear motors. It's crazy fast. It definitely rivals the Sony in that regard. And if you're worried about a third-party lens not keeping up, that is absolutely not an issue here at all. The tracking, especially on the Sony a7R5 that has amazing autofocus and has their AI algorithms, is also really well done. Definitely sticky, and I had no issues using this at all in a fast-paced environment. One of the things that is kind of a bummer here, and I understand why Sony does it, but you are limited on cameras like the A1 or the A9 III that I just reviewed last week. You are limited to only 15 frames a second on this thing, but you are definitely not limited in the Leica L mount version. I get that Sony wants to have control over how their autofocus performs, but on a lens like this, where the internal motors and everything like that are absolutely up to par, it seems like I do wish Sony would have some sort of internal regulation and just go, yeah, sure, we'll test this thing out. If its motors and everything are up to par, then we will allow it to do whatever the camera is capable of. Because I do think that part of the joy of having a Sony camera is the ecosystem that is allowed to exist within there. And having lenses like this, while maybe will cut into your 70-200 sales a little bit, are keeping people within your brand and, again, ecosystem. So I think that is a net positive to have this available on the Sony E mount. And it is specifically a sports lens, so having your higher tier sports cameras not be able to use the full capacity and capabilities with a lens that is really amazing is definitely a bummer. So overall, this lens is legitimately amazing. It is, I think, $1,300 less than the Sony version. It's a little bit more than the Tamron version, but from what I've seen, you get the full 70 to 200 range as well. You also get just really, really, really good performance. This thing is super sharp. It has very minimal chromatic aberration. It has very minimal, if at all, focus breathing. There's just a lot to love about this lens. And if you can get over the fact that it is a little bit larger, a little bit heavier, I think this is a no-brainer for anybody that's in the market for a super high quality 70 to 200 lens. Everything about this thing performs amazing. And again, the only downside that I can see at all on this thing is its full compatibility with Sony cameras and the fact that it's a little bit heavier, it's a little bit less balanced. But again, if you can get over that, this is a 100% recommendation from me, and it's something I'm 100% going to be considering picking up in the future. So thanks for watching. If you are interested in my coverage of the A9 III, you can check that out up here. If you want to see my other video about my beloved Sigma 28 to 70, you can check that out up here, and I'll see you all on the next one.